At this time, we're going to give attention to Brother Jeff Dean.
The Bible at Ecclesiastes 7:1 tells us how valuable having a good name with God is. The footnote renders good name as a good reputation. Tim and Aleksa certainly enjoyed a good name with God and in this community. We're going to take a closer look at Aleksa and Tim at this time, and then we're going to talk about their married life. Alexandra Naomi Lamai, who we all affectionately know as Aleksa, and some say Lexa, was born January the 4th, 1989. She was baptized November the 1st, 2002. And her and Tim were married on September the 26th, 2009. Aleksa served as a regular pioneer here in the Thomaston congregation. Aleksa comes from a loving, spiritual-minded family. It's also a family with a strong spiritual heritage, going back several generations of serving Jehovah. At a very early age, she cultivated a deep love for Jehovah God, and she dedicated her life to Jehovah and symbolized that by baptism at the age of 13. Aleksa always wanted to pioneer. So as soon as she was baptized, she went to the body of elders in Barnesville and asked if she could be a pioneer. Well, the brothers thought she might be a little bit young. So they told her, well, why don't you auxiliary pioneer at first? And from what I understand, the look on her face was one of disappointment. But Aleksa was determined that she was going to pioneer. She auxiliary pioneered. She went back to the brothers. And this time, they appointed her as a regular pioneer. She pioneered for 11 years. When you talk to Aleksa's family, her friends, about qualities that really stood out in Aleksa, there were several that you heard over and over and over again. Gentleness, kindness, humility, and determination. We talked about that with her quest to be a pioneer. But without question, her most outstanding quality was her deep love for Jehovah God and her love for pioneering. You're going to hear that word a lot this afternoon. You can't talk about Aleksa and not talk about pioneering in the same sentence, because that's what she was. She was a pioneer. Her determination always came out with that desire to pioneer. Her choice of secular work, everything, all of her decisions revolved around that strong desire to pioneer. And pioneer is what she did. A few other things about Aleksa was her love for reading. In the program, you'll see some things that we may not mention up here today, but that was mentioned in the program. And in talking to her mom, she got that from her. And she was a voracious reader. In fact, talking to Deidre, she could sit down with a book and spend the whole day and read the whole book. She loved to read. She also had an artsy side. She was beginning to draw. That runs in the family, from what I understand. And was becoming quite good at it. But another thing that stood out with Aleksa, if you were around her any time at all, you knew that she loved animals. She had a horse. She loved her horse. She'd spend hours with Tequila. She loved her dog. That did come out wrong. But she really did love her horse. In fact, just a month or so ago, she and her daddy, with his little girl, were riding horseback on the beaches at Jekyll Island. Her choice of job, her choice of career, you hate to use the word career because her real career was pioneering, but the work she chose to be able to pioneer was dog grooming. And she did that because she loved animals, but because of the flexibility that it provided her to be able to pioneer. Again, that determination. There was quite a story involved with how she was able to start doing that when there seemed to be no doors opening for her in that way. She was determined and she became a pioneer. But when we talk about what Aleksa loved, we have to talk about Tim. Theirs is an enduring love story. Very nice write-up in the program about their love story and how they came together. But knowing them, it was very obvious that Tim and Aleksa loved each other very much. She loved him dearly. He loved her dearly. So we're going to talk about their marriage in a few minutes. But first, let's talk about Tim. Timothy Patrick Lamont. Timmy, as he is affectionately known by his family and a number of friends, was born July the 5th, 1985. He was baptized April 16th in the year 2000. Tim served as a ministerial servant here in the Thomaston congregation and also as a regular pioneer. He and his wife pioneered together. Tim also comes from a loving, spiritual family. Tim, like Aleksa, cultivated a deep love for Jehovah at a very early age. He was baptized at age 14. Talking to his mom and his family, a number of experiences in the ministry from his early childhood. You can ask her later because I'm not going to go into those now. But at a very early age, preschool, he enjoyed the ministry and would sometimes ask questions that required very deep Bible understanding. At a very early age, Timmy would do that. When you think about his qualities, loyalty stands out. Number one, his loyalty to Jehovah God, his loyalty to Jehovah's arrangement of things. But also, when you had Timmy as a friend, you had a real friend. He was very loyal to his friends. He was passionate about everything that he did. If he liked it, he was passionate about it. And that included music. He picked up the guitar when he was quite young and never put it down. In fact, he has 6 of them. Loved playing the guitar. And he also liked things like skateboarding. Being from Southern California, I guess that would come natural for him. And there are stories about that too that you can ask the family. Fishing. I knew Tim before he ever went fishing. But after he went fishing, he was a fisherman. He loved it, and he fished at every opportunity. But when we mention Timmy, we have to mention his family growing up. He was the youngest of 4 boys. And as you know, boys are rambunctious. Timmy was the youngest of the 4. But an interesting note is, his mom said he was the only one that she had to put a leash on before she could take him out in public. So that tells you a little bit about his relationship with his brothers. And that brings us to a story that I just have to tell because it highlights another outstanding quality of Timmy. As a preteen, Timmy and his brother George were tussling. That may not be a word that's used in Southern California, but in the South, it's called tussling when 2 little boys get together and play rough. Timmy got mad and he lunged at George. Well, he had a pencil in his hand, so he stuck him with it. Didn't really hurt George very bad, but Timmy didn't know that. And George played the part. He acted like he was just seriously injured from that. And Timmy started getting serious. He started getting worried. And of course, George had to keep it going. So he convinced Timmy that he had lead poisoning and that he was going to die. So when he said that, when all of this rushed in on Timmy, what did he do? He dropped to his knees, threw both arms up in the air and says, "Oh, Jehovah, I've killed him." But see, that highlights a quality about Timmy. He's a very sensitive person. He genuinely cares about people. Even his older brother who picked on him. And that came out in everything that Tim did. Whether he was in the ministry, whether he was helping people in the congregation, no matter what he was doing, you could sense that he genuinely cared about you and about others. If he thought he hurt your feelings, he wouldn't even sleep at night until he had had a chance to talk to you and try to straighten everything out. He was just that type of guy. Tim and Aleksa were perfect for each other. They were, in many ways, opposites. As we mentioned, he was rambunctious. She was gentle and quieter. Tim tended to be impulsive at times, while Aleksa was more deliberate. But they helped each other to grow. Truly is a love story when you talk about their marriage. Tim became more focused, and Aleksa became more outgoing as she began to overcome a measure of shyness. They were always looking for ways to encourage others in the congregation or outside the congregation. They took young ones under their wings, encouraged them to have a fuller share in the ministry, invited them out with them in the ministry. They were truly a threefold cord, as spoken of in Ecclesiastes 4:12. Worshipping Jehovah was foremost in their marriage. Pioneering was their life. Everything else revolved around that. They kept their lives simple, not getting bogged down with a lot of material things in order to make sure that they would be able to continue in their ministry. Together, they set goals of making themselves available for other privileges of service that might open up to them in the future. What motivated Tim and Aleksa to live their life this way? To spend so much of their time energy, and resources in the ministry. As we mentioned, they loved and worshiped Jehovah God with their whole heart. They also had unshakable faith in Jesus Christ, Jehovah's only begotten Son. And they knew that God's kingdom was the only hope for mankind. Of course, we're familiar with a mention of that kingdom in the scriptures in Matthew chapter 6, beginning in verse 9. Some call it the Lord's Prayer, the model prayer. Jesus taught us to pray for God's kingdom to come, for His will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. Well, they wanted others to have the same hope that they had, and they wanted others to have the same relationship with Jehovah. The heartache and the tragedies that we see around us today. But Tim and Aleksa's hope went beyond this tragedy for the human family. They recognized, as we do, that God cannot lie. His purpose was clearly stated for us in the first chapter of Genesis. Jehovah God cannot lie. He cannot fail. If you'll turn to Isaiah 55 and verse 11, and let's read that together. Isaiah 55, verse 11. So my word that goes out of my mouth will be. It will not return to me without results, but it will certainly accomplish whatever is my delight, and it will have sure success in what I send it to do. Jehovah cannot lie. His purpose for the earth and for obedient mankind will not be thwarted. It will take place. Tim and Aleksa knew that. And they were passionate about telling that good news to others. The Bible also provides comfort for us in a situation like this. Because of that sin in the Garden of Eden, because mankind does die, because we lose loved ones, we need to understand what the condition of our loved ones is and when they die. And the Bible tells us that. Ecclesiastes, the 9th chapter, verses 5 and 10 tell us the condition of the dead. There it tells us that the dead are basically unconscious, that they know nothing at all, which means there's no pain either, which is a wonderful thought. They are, in effect, sleeping. And that's the way Jesus put it when He was going to where Lazarus was. He knew Lazarus had died. John, the 11th chapter, the 11th through the 14th verses. Jesus, when traveling to Lazarus and his family, said, Lazarus is asleep. Well, the disciples thought that he was just sleeping. He said, no, Lazarus has died. But Jesus understood what happens when we die. He knew that Lazarus was sleeping in death. Tim, so this was the hope that they shared with others. They believed it with all their heart, and we can believe that too. And this is the key point that we want to take from this. Tim and Aleksa are sleeping. Deidre, Johnny, Lulu is safe. Linda, Skip. Timmy is safe. They're both in the safest place in the universe. There is no safer place for them to be. They're safe in Jehovah's memory. That's the safest place that we could ever hope to be. They're safe. And this is what comes next for them. Please look at John, the 5th chapter. We're going to read verse 28. John chapter 5 and verse 28. Do not be amazed at this, for the hour is coming in which all those in the memorial tombs will hear his voice and come out. Timmy and Lulu are safe. And we look forward to when they hear Jesus' voice and come out, don't we? But it still hurts. So how do we cope with this tremendous loss? Being here today is a start. You're surrounded by hundreds of people who love Timmy and Aleksa. People who love you. People who genuinely care about you. People who want to help. Draw comfort from all of your friends and family that are here. Draw strength from it. The loss is mutual. Over the coming weeks and months, stay close to our brothers and sisters in your respective congregations. What a loving arrangement Jehovah has given us in that regard. Through that congregation arrangement, he feeds us spiritually. He strengthens us. He protects us. And he comforts us. What a loving arrangement that is. So it's there. We need to take full advantage of that. When the crowds all go home, continue to rely on Jehovah in prayer. Because he will strengthen you. He will sustain you. And speaking with everyone, when the crowds all go home, remember, friends, these families still need your loving support in the coming weeks and months. So we want to be there for them. A time like this is also an appropriate time to think about how we are using our lives. James 4:14 says, Do you not know what your life will be like tomorrow? For you are a mist that appears for a little while, then disappears. So it's very important that we consider Ecclesiastes 7:1 and 2. We mentioned that at the outset. But let's go ahead and look at that. It speaks of having a good name with God. But it really helps us appreciate something else that we need to give consideration to. That's Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verses 1 and 2. There it says, a good name is better than good oil, and the day of death is better than the day of birth. Better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting. For that is the end of every man, and the living should take it to heart. Tim and Aleksa have a good name with Jehovah God. We're still making that name, aren't we? So it's appropriate for us to think about how we're using our lives. What are our priorities in life? It's good to think about those things. Are spiritual things our priority in life? They should be. Friends, we're going to close by reading one of Tim and Alexa's favorite scriptures, one they used in the ministry many, many times. Revelation 21, verses 3 and 4. Revelation 21, 3 and 4. With that, I heard a loud voice from the throne say, "Look, the tent of God is with mankind, and he will reside with them, and they will be his people. And God himself will be with them. And he will wipe out every tear from their eyes. And death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away." What a beautiful scripture. Tim and Aleksa lived for that. And that's what they're going to see. Hopefully all of us will remain faithful to Jehovah and be there to greet them. Let's read verse 4 again. We're going to change one word just a little bit, just to personalize it. And he will wipe out every tear from our eyes. And death will be no more, neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away. Great comfort comes from knowing that Jehovah yearns to bring faithful ones, including Tim and Aleksa, back to life. Meanwhile, we must keep ourselves in God's love, patiently waiting for that certain fulfillment of Jehovah's purpose to give obedient humans everlasting life.